I remember the cold of the floor before I remember the pain. Smooth tile beneath my palms, the distant thrum of laughter leaking in from the other room. My bones ached, my stomach twisted, and still I crawled. Not because I wanted to, not because I was weak, but because asking again would have meant hearing them say no. Again. I had been a nurse for 32 years. I had held the dying as they whispered regrets and names no longer spoken. I had mopped blood from sterile floors, calmed seizures, bandaged wounds I could not name. I had raised 3 children on a single income after burying the only man who ever called me beautiful without irony. I had spent a lifetime in quiet service. And there I was, forgotten, on my knees, a shadow in the house I helped build. Kendra's voice drifted from the hallway. Simon's laughter followed it like a trail of oil. I moved slowly, breath catching, eyes stinging, not from shame, but from something colder. A beginning. Something shifting inside me. They thought I was small. They forgot who taught them to stand. If you've ever given your love freely, only to have it used against you, press that like button. If you've ever swallowed silence just to keep peace in a house where no one heard your voice, subscribe. This isn't just a story, it's a reckoning. On this channel, we honor the ones who were overlooked, dismissed, or made to feel invisible. We share stories where quiet strength doesn't stay quiet forever, and where justice isn't shouted, but measured, deliberate, final. And if you've ever had someone treat your presence like a burden after everything you've given, tell me your story in the comments. You are not forgotten. You are not alone. My name is Clarice Harlow. I am 58 years old, a widow, a mother of 3, and for most of my life, I was a hospice nurse. I've watched life slip away gently and violently. I've held strangers' hands when their families wouldn't come. I was never afraid of pain, only of leaving this world without having mattered. After Harold passed, the silence of my home became too loud. The walls felt like they were folding in, pressing on the space he used to fill. My youngest son, Aaron, suggested I move in with him and his wife while I recovered from a mild stroke. I was hesitant, but grateful. I sold the house Harold built, packed our photo albums, his favorite coat, the letters he wrote me during his deployments. I kept only what mattered. Their home was large, modern, full of glass and white furniture. Kendra greeted me with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. She told me it would be nice to have me there, that it would keep the kids connected to tradition. I should have listened closer to her wording. Aaron had changed. He used to laugh with his shoulders, his whole chest, like his father. But now his smiles were shorter, eyes always on his phone. Kendra kept a tight grip on the schedules, the groceries, the conversation. She was a woman who dressed for war in stilettos and soft perfume. Everything about her was sharp, down to the way she folded napkins at dinner. The first week, I was told the kitchen was off limits during meal prep. Kendra preferred her flow uninterrupted. My room was a windowless space off the laundry. She called it cozy. It smelled like bleach and mildew. I didn't complain. I was raised to believe gratitude meant endurance. Simon arrived 2 days later. Kendra's brother. Older than Aaron, heavy-set, smug. He walked like the house owed him something. I assumed he was visiting. He never left. He drank out of crystal tumblers and left dishes in the sink. His jokes made my skin pull tight. He once asked if I still remembered how to use a toilet. Kendra giggled. Aaron looked away. I tried to be useful. Folded laundry, watched the children when asked. I offered to cook, my roast chicken, Harold's favorite, but it was pushed aside for Kendra's kale puree and imported salmon. She said, "We try to keep processed food out of the kids' diet." I began to disappear in pieces. First, I was asked not to use the upstairs bathroom. Then, my reading lamp was moved to make space for Simon's workout gear. The books I brought were packed back into their box without a word. One night, I overheard Kendra on the phone. She's harmless, a little ghost in the corner. Honestly, it's like babysitting a slow shadow. I lay still that night, Harold's coat pressed to my chest. Aaron no longer spoke to me unless Kendra initiated the conversation. The grandchildren stopped asking for bedtime stories. Kendra said, "We're working on emotional boundaries." They didn't hit me. They didn't scream. They just erased me slowly, like chalk from a board. One morning, I reached for the kettle and found a note on it. "Please ask before using appliances. K." That afternoon, Simon told me to move my shoes from the entryway. "This isn't a nursing home," he smirked. I retreated into myself, into quiet, the only thing I still owned. And then came the moment I'll never forget. I asked to use the upstairs bathroom. My body wasn't well, the stairs too much. Kendra said no. "We can't set that precedent." Aaron didn't speak. I waited. And then I felt the cramp, the sharp twist of urgency. When I asked again, Simon laughed. "You've got 2 legs, don't you?" And so I crawled, across polished tile, breath shallow, knees stiff. No one helped. No one looked. And when I reached that cold porcelain bowl, something inside me shattered, and something colder began to form. I wasn't afraid of dying. I was afraid of being erased. And I was done being grateful. After that day, something inside me stopped asking. I still moved slowly, still kept to my corner of the house, but I watched more carefully. I noticed the way Kendra smiled when guests were around, the way her tone shifted from sweet to surgical the moment doors closed. I noticed Aaron's shrinking presence, the way he nodded at everything she said, like he was trying to keep his head above water. And I watched Simon, the way he prowled through the house as if it belonged to him, his breath always heavy with drink, his eyes darting just a second too long over what didn't belong to him. Days blurred into each other. My pain lingered, sometimes manageable, sometimes sharp and paralyzing. Kendra's rules kept multiplying. No noise after 10, no phone calls unless outside, no speaking to the children without permission. She said it was for structure. Structure was a word they used to cage me, not protect me. Aaron became a shadow of himself. He never hugged me anymore. Our conversations turned into updates. Polite, short, emotionless. He'd say, "Kendra's under a lot of pressure," as though that explained the silence, the exclusion, the quiet cruelty. Kendra began insisting I seemed confused lately. She said it in front of the children, in front of Aaron. Once at dinner, she corrected my story about Aaron's childhood. "That's not how he remembers it, Clarice. Maybe you're misremembering." I wasn't. One morning, I found my medication rearranged. One bottle was missing 3 pills. Another was replaced entirely with a generic version I never used. When I asked about it, Kendra smiled. "I had a better supplier." "You're welcome." Simon became bolder too. He began entering my room without knocking. He'd lean on the doorframe, watching me, sometimes asking strange questions. Whether I still used passwords, whether I had any money left, always ending with a grin. I tried to tell Aaron. He looked tired. Simon jokes too much. That's just his way. I tried to explain that it wasn't safe. Aaron touched my shoulder once and said, "You always worry too much." That was the last time he touched me. The final insult came during what should have been a celebration. My birthday. Or so I thought. I heard them in the kitchen, laughing, drinking. I heard wrapping paper tear, and then I heard my granddaughter say, "Why isn't Grandma coming?" And Kendra replied, clear as glass, "She had a long nap today. She'll only slow things down." I was upstairs, awake, listening. No one knocked. No one called. I sat alone with a slice of dry toast and a candle I lit myself. No song, no card, no acknowledgement. That night I woke needing the bathroom. My legs were shaking. I called out, twice. No answer. I stood, dizzy. I called again. From the hallway, Simon's voice rang out, slurred and amused. Use your hands, Clarice, crawl like last time. Kendra laughed. She'll manage. She's good at that. I waited, breath caught, hoping they'd forget I existed again. Then came the cramp, sharp, immediate, unforgiving. I bent forward, gripping the edge of the nightstand, trying to stand. The hallway. Light glared through the bottom of the door. No footsteps, no help. So I opened the door and began again, palms to tile, knees stiff, spine burning. Every inch forward scraped something from me. I passed the stairs, heard the TV, heard laughter, smelled wine. No one turned. When I reached the bathroom, I pulled myself upright with shaking hands. And then I looked in the mirror. My face was lined with sweat, hair matted, lips pale. But my eyes were still mine. And in them I saw something that hadn't been there in months. Fire. I stood there for a long time, letting the silence fill me, letting the humiliation harden. This wasn't grief anymore. This was rage, with a pulse. That night, I didn't sleep. I wrote. I listed everything, every rule, every word, every bruise, every pill. It was the night I stopped being their burden and started becoming their reckoning. The next morning, I folded every emotion into stillness. I smiled when I passed Aaron in the hall. I nodded when Kendra reminded me not to touch the thermostat. I ignored Simon when he asked if I needed help walking. They thought silence meant surrender. They mistook my calm for submission. It was strategy. I began by revisiting old habits, patterns from the nursing days, observation, routine, detail. I timed their comings and goings, memorized passwords when Kendra typed near the kitchen island. I noted when Aaron stepped out for calls. I wrote everything in shorthand, hidden between recipe cards. No one noticed. I retrieved my old laptop from the storage bin where they'd dumped my things, wiped it clean, installed screen capture software, and created a private archive. Every insult, every dismissal, every time they left the children with me without asking. I took pictures of my living conditions, mold under the window, the split in my mattress, the expired food I was given when no one else was eating. Then I called Miriam. She'd been my friend since my early nursing shifts, a hospice lawyer now, sharp and soft in equal measure. She didn't speak in pity, she listened. And when I told her the truth, she asked for proof. I sent everything. Miriam helped me draft legal documentation, witness statements, reports, timelines. She advised me to begin recording conversations. I used an old mobile I kept hidden in a hollowed-out prayer book. Every laugh, every insult, every casual cruelty, all of it stored. I planted a second device beneath Simon's armchair, the one he used during his drunken phone calls with friends. Calls filled with stories of gambling, scams, and drug use. He always thought I was asleep. He never checked the bookshelves. Meanwhile, I began documenting Kendra's medical behavior. As a licensed HR executive in a healthcare firm, her access to prescription samples was not legal for family use. I had her texts admitting she swapped my meds. I had photos of altered pill labels. She was confident. She was sloppy. I also created a series of letters, sealed and signed, each one addressed to Aaron, the grandchildren, even the licensing board. Insurance, too, each one calmly written, explaining what I'd endured, what I'd discovered, and what would happen next. But the most important thing I recorded was me. One night, while the house was asleep, I sat in front of my laptop and looked into the camera. No makeup, no light, just my voice. I documented it all, my health, the neglect, the emotional toll. My hands trembled at first, but my voice didn't. I am Clarice Harlow, I began, and if anything happens to me, I want it known this was not illness, this was erosion, and I was not weak, I was removed. I copied the files to a flash drive and mailed it to Miriam. The next morning, I made oatmeal for the kids. Kendra didn't look at me. Simon grunted. Aaron muttered something about a deadline. I smiled as I poured the coffee. I had already begun the fire. They just didn't smell the smoke yet. I left on a Wednesday morning. No goodbye, no note. Just my coat, my papers, and Harold's wedding ring tucked into my pocket. Aaron was at work. Kendra was on a conference call. Simon was asleep on the couch. I closed the door gently behind me, not out of politeness, but control. The kind that comes from walking away before anyone thinks to stop you. Miriam had arranged everything: a quiet place to stay, a doctor to document my condition, and a meeting scheduled with Adult Protective Services. I handed over every piece of evidence: the recordings, the pill bottles, the photographs, the timelines, the files. They didn't blink. What I brought wasn't just a complaint. It was a case. 2 days later, the knock on Kendra's door came sharp and official. Investigators from the Department of Elder Care. They asked to see my room. They asked the children questions. They asked about medications, living conditions, financial access. Kendra stumbled through answers. Simon refused to come downstairs. Aaron looked like he'd just come out of anesthesia, dazed and useless. That same afternoon, Miriam sent a package to Kendra's employer: the pharmaceutical misuse, the illegal storage of samples, and documented tampering with controlled substances. Her credentials fell under immediate review. Simon's secrets were next. One of the phones I left behind was linked to a series of online gambling accounts under aliases. I'd kept screenshots, transaction histories, even a few voicemails from his late-night threats. The IRS received it all in one neatly organized digital folder. Aaron was served with legal notice. He was named in a complaint for willful neglect, failure to report abuse, and financial mismanagement. Every grocery receipt he charged to my pension card, every medical copay I was told was taken care of, all documented, all traceable. I stayed silent through it all. I watched it unfold from Miriam's apartment, drinking tea by the window. News spread slowly at first. Kendra's workplace gossip, the whispers at Simon's bar. Then faster. Court hearings scheduled, child services reviewing the home, and social media posts picking up steam from the anonymous account Miriam and I set up at the Forgotten Mother. Inside that account, we posted my video. No anger, no drama, just my face telling the truth. It spread like wildfire. People recognized the story, their own mothers, their own mistakes, their own guilt. Kendra called me 7 times, left 4 voicemails. Her voice cracked, strained. "Clarice, please, we need to talk. We can fix this." Simon sent a text. "You made your point. Enough now." Aaron didn't reach out, not at first, but when the subpoenas arrived and the silence around him grew louder than the noise inside his home, he called. Twice. I didn't answer. The house they once ruled began to fracture, reputation first, then income, then legality. They looked around for someone to blame, but I was no longer there. I had moved from shadow to storm. And storms don't ask for permission. They arrive, they cleanse, and then they leave everything different. The courtroom smelled like old paper and disinfectant. I sat at the edge of the gallery, hands folded neatly in my lap. My cane rested against the bench beside me, unused. I didn't need it today. Across the aisle, Aaron sat alone, shoulders hunched, suit wrinkled. He looked like a man waiting to be told who he was supposed to be. Kendra clutched a folder to her chest, whispering to her lawyer, eyes darting. Simon wasn't present. His charges were handled separately. Gambling, fraud, failure to comply. He'd pleaded out, hoping to avoid more attention. The judge asked for opening statements. My attorney rose, calm and precise, just like Miriam trained him to be. He played the video I had recorded, the one with no tears, no trembling, just truth. The room shifted with it. Kendra dropped her gaze. Aaron covered his mouth. When I was called to the stand, I walked slowly, unaided. I met every eye. I spoke clearly. I am not here for sympathy, I said. I am here for acknowledgement. What was done to me was not a misunderstanding. It was a choice, a series of small, cruel choices made quietly over time until I began to forget I had a name outside of burden. When I stepped down, the courtroom was silent. The judge ruled in my favor: financial restitution, a formal reprimand for Kendra's license, restrictions placed on the household. But that wasn't the part that stayed with me. It was the whole way afterward. Aaron followed me out, his eyes wet. "Mom," he said, his voice breaking. I didn't know how bad it was. I looked at him, not with hate, not even anger, just distance. "You knew enough," I said, "and you did nothing." He reached for me. I stepped back. That was all. Later, at home, I received a small envelope. Inside was a crayon. Drawing. My granddaughter had drawn me holding a book, smiling. On the back, "Grandma, I miss your stories." I pressed it to my heart, not out of pain, out of peace, because I had finally spoken, and the world had finally listened. I used to think love meant endurance, that to be a good mother, a good woman, you swallowed discomfort like medicine, bitter, necessary, private. I thought silence was grace. That dignity lived in the background, behind closed doors, folded into careful smiles. But now I know the truth. Silence does not protect the wounded. It feeds the wolves. What they did to me was not dramatic. It was quiet. Small moments, dismissed, explained, excused. But cruelty disguised as normalcy is still cruelty. And when you endure too much for too long, you begin to disappear. I refused to disappear, not because I wanted revenge, but because I wanted memory, mine and theirs, to remain honest. They saw a frail woman crawling. They never expected that woman to rise. And now I walk not with vengeance in my heart, but clarity. I speak my name not to reclaim power, but to remind myself it was never theirs to take. I am Clarice Harlow. And I was never invisible. They just weren't looking, but they see me now. If someone ever looked at your patience and mistook it for weakness, press that like button. If you've ever had to rebuild yourself after being dismissed, overlooked, or silenced, subscribe. Because here we don't just tell stories, we remind the world what it means to rise with quiet power. This was Clarice Harlow's story, but it could have been mine. It could have been yours. Share your experience in the comments. The time you stood up, walked away, or simply chose to be seen again. Your voice matters, because the ones who endure the most often speak the truth the loudest when they finally speak. And justice remembers its way home.